Start off with this. I mean, we're a 2-3 football team because we lack consistency. I think that's been pretty clear. We've, at times in every game this season, we've played really good football in all three phases. I think you can go back and look at different times where we've played well, but we've not put a whole game together. And I haven't been reading what y'all been writing, but I'm assuming y'all are talking about that, and rightfully so. We've yet to put a whole game together, and it's frustrating. Our fans are frustrated, and I get it. Nobody's more frustrated than me. And our first half versus Texas Tech was inexcusable. I can't reason it. We competed in the second half. Thought we played well. Um, at times, offensively, played really well. Defensively, our first two series in the second half are what we're looking for. That's how we need to play defensive football here. But we didn't finish. We didn't finish very well. And and so just wrapping up the Texas Tech game, special teams, we only punted twice. One of them we were able to we did a pretty nice job. The second one we had an opportunity to pin them inside the 5 or inside the 10, and we didn't. Our kickoff coverage was really good. Proud of our kickoff unit. Especially on the last kickoff of the game. I think that drive started on the 14 or 15, but our kickoff coverage was solid. I thought Staley did a nice job kicking off. Um, Casey Lay continues to perform well. Our field goal protection was good. Kickoff return hurt us really for the second week in a row. We've had a penalty each of the last 2 weeks we've had to start drives inside the 10 or 12 yard line. Defensively, first half wise, we just did not do a very good job with their shifts and motions. We misaligned. We didn't tear off blocks. Very similar. That first half was very, very similar to the first half at Maryland, really, which was disappointing. Missed too many tackles. I thought we played good enough to win on the defensive line. That's the biggest difference between the Maryland game. Maryland game, we didn't play very well D-line wise in the first half. This week, we really were pretty consistent up front. I thought our D-line played well. We just didn't play good enough at the second or third level to win the game. I thought these guys on defense played well. Dante Steele, 2 weeks in a row, has played at a high level. Keem Messidor has really played well all season. And then Taj Austin, back-to-back weeks, played really well. Those are the guys defensively. Offensively, in the first half, just lack of execution. And those execution errors kind of plagued us in the red zone where we had to settle for field goals in the second half too. We've got to be a more detail-oriented group, and there's a small margin for error. And when we don't do the details right, then we're killing ourselves in the red zone or not putting ourselves in positions, notably third and long, like we were in the first half. Um, I thought played well. I thought Zach Frazier played really well, and he's been consistent. He's been our most consistent offensive player all year. Daggy played his best half of football. The second half was really, really good. I thought his numbers overall were good. Um, and then Isaiah Esdale and Winston Wright both performed well at receiver. And then Michael Laughlin's played well 2 weeks in a row. He played really well on Saturday. So excited about him. Um, but like I said at the start, we're a 2-3 football team, and we lack consistency, and we've got to play better and do so for a full game. Because in our league, these games are going to come down to the fourth quarter, and we've been tied or ahead in the fourth quarter of our 3 losses, and didn't get it done. And so we've got to get those things fixed. All things. We'll switch up some things we're doing in practice. Try to emphasize and finishing practices better. But we've got to do that because the games in our league, like I said, they're going to come down to the fourth quarter. And moving on to Baylor, 4-1. They're coming off a close loss to Oklahoma State, as you know. I think, and I'll say this, I've got a lot of respect for Dave Aranda and his staff, and I think they've done a great job. I thought they unfairly got some flack last year. They a ton of guys lost off that really Matt Rule's last team in 19 and the pandemic, and I just remember somebody asking me at media days about them, and I think they've done a really good job this year. Offensively, new OC and Jeff Grimes coming over from Baylor, long-time offensive line coach, very well thought of inside the profession. They've turned into 11 and 12 personnel team. They want to run the ball. I think the running backs are both playing well. They've got 2 I think they complement each other. They got big play threats on the outside, guys that run really, really well. And the Bohannon, he's playing well. He's taking care of the football. I think that's they're not turning it over and they're running the football. Defensively, both Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts, their defensive coordinator, really good defensive mind. They're multiple in what they do schematically. A lot of pressures. I think they have two of the best defenders in our league. It's not. I think I know. And if you're not playing against them, they're really fun to watch. Petrie, he's special. Flies to the ball. He's around the ball carrier all the time. And same with Bernard, the linebacker, number 2. I mean, those two guys, like I said, if you're not playing against them, they're fun to watch. Worth the price of admission. I think they play the game the way it's supposed to be played at all times, and they played really well against us last year. And defensively, they're the group that has a lot of team speed. Special teams. I feel like I say this every week, but it's accurate with the teams we played so far. Is they've got really good specialists. I think the kickoff guys kicked it out on touchbacks 29 to 33 times, and that's a huge advantage. Their punter has done a really nice job with hang time. And Ebner as the returner, both punt returner and kickoff returner, he's one of the best kickoff returners in our conference over the last 3 years. He's special. He's got multiple kickoff returns each of the last 3 seasons. So he's a guy who can take a distance. So it's a huge challenge for our coverage units. So that's kind of the preview on Baylor. With that, I'll take questions.
So Neal, with the consistency aspect, your run game hasn't had as much consistency as I'm sure you want. Do you see opportunities to improve that this year, or is it just a long-term fix?
No, I think that we've got to be better detail-oriented. I think at times when we've done what we've needed to do, from a run game footwork standpoint, and how we're IDing that, we've had success. We haven't been consistent enough with our footwork. Our run reads have not been as good as they need to be. I think early in the year, not having Mike at tight end did hurt us. Since he's been back, he's blocked the edge much better. And then when Garrett's in the game, he's got to read it, and miss several of those in the drive he had in the first half. So I think it's a really a culmination of everybody, but it goes back to these details in the footwork, all right, where our eyes are supposed to be, and then and doing that on a consistent basis. Can we run the football better than what we have? Yes. I think if we're detail oriented and we do a better job with our footwork, yes, I think we can run the football. I'm not destined that we can't do it.
Bernard, how do you plan? You didn't play against Oklahoma State. Plan for him to be in there?
Oh yeah, I think so. And listen to what Dave said. That's what he's. I think for 2 weeks now he's saying he's going to play against us. So I don't know any reason he wouldn't. From my understanding, he had some kind of minor procedure done last week, missed the game. As far as planning for him, we've got to do a really good job. He's fast, as fast as any linebacker. He does a really good job running things down. They blitz him, quite a bit, and he does a great job in that aspect, not only from the edge but interior as well. And he's a playmaker. You know what I mean? Like, we've got to account for where he's at. And he's going to make plays. He's going to make tackles. We just got to make sure those aren't tackles for losses.
You talked a lot about starting with energy, and obviously it wasn't there this past week.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from a coaching standpoint? I mean, you sound like you felt you had it.
Well, here's my whole thing. Is like I'm still like I'm so pissed about how we played at the beginning of the game, because in other sports I kind of understand. You got all these games in other sports. In football, you get 12. Like, how the hell you not get ready to play one game a week? I don't get it. I don't get it. But it hadn't been an issue. We started fast every game, but this one offensively. Defensively, not as fast. Did a good job early against Virginia Tech, but other than that, we struggled on the first drive. So we're going to switch up some things. I think that you got to acknowledge it's an issue. So it's been an issue for us more so defensively than offensively, but offensively it was a terrible start the other day. So you got to acknowledge it. It's no different than in the fourth quarter. We played really good football in the second and third quarters, other than offensively in the third quarter against Maryland. Um, but we got to start better defensively, and we got to finish on both sides better in the fourth quarter. So you got to acknowledge the issue, then you got to go to work fixing it. And we'll be creative and some things we're going to change up and how we're going to practice today and tomorrow.
Neal, this might kind of piggyback a little bit, but offensively on the range of on one end where kind of continue what you're doing, practice, improve, learn, improve, and the other end being you have a sample size for this season, last season, however long, maybe to change results, you have to change what you're doing. Where do you fall in between there?
It's a good question, Mike. I think that everything you do is based on what your offensive line, your quarterbacks are capable of doing. And you got to put them in really good positions. I think schematically everything we're doing is sound. I think that we're not asking our guys. I think if you ask me like what's a well coached unit look like, all right, or a group that's prepared going into a game, you're not asking your players to do something they can't do. So I feel confident that really in all three phases we're not asking our players to go out and execute something they can't do. Are we built right now to go outscore everybody in our league? We're not, and I talked about that a little bit after the Oklahoma game. Would we like to be more explosive? Absolutely. Do we have some limitations that we got to overcome? Yeah, but I think a lot of teams do. I think if you go back and watch us, like what was the difference when we went up and down the field all four possessions in the second half? Compared to the first half. Well, all right. Well, the first thing is we were much more aggressive as far as from a player standpoint. Okay, and meaning that we had more energy, we competed harder, but also we executed the fundamentals of the play better, and we made some plays. Does that make sense? Like Winston won on a big crossing route on 3rd and 11 was a great man route. They had a couple where he scrambled on a couple where he got pressure, and one of them he got 6, and one of them he got 11. You know what I mean? Like, so we did some better jobs making plays. But right now we're built. We're most of the time we play good defense. We've got to be able to run the ball better, and then we've got to be efficient with our pass game. And the biggest thing is you can't turn the ball over. The one turnover of the day was 7 points. That ended up being a difference in the game.
So, with what you're doing,
I would say content. Hell, we ain't winning.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
but like what you bring into every game, you said you feel comfortable with.
yeah, like if you go back and look at it, like we've got, we get guys open. We've got guys in the run game. We get one-on-one with safeties. I think from a schematic standpoint, what we're doing sound. Can we always do better? Yeah, I mean, like, trust me, I'd love to come in here and say, man, hey, we got to do this, this, and this. But what we're doing schematically sound. We've got to do a better job executing. I think that the one area that we could evaluate, in which we are, is we got to do a better job in second when we get second and longs down in the red zone, because that's what's got us. Like if you look at it the other day when we had the two we had to kick field goals on, we got 2nd and 6, got a procedure penalty, now it's 2nd and 11. Like how do we get that 2nd and 11 into a better 3rd and manageable than we did? Those are the kind of like minute things that maybe doesn't catch the big headlines or whatever, but those are the little plays that make a huge difference. How do you get that to 3rd and 4 rather than being at 3rd and 11? Then you're going to struggle once you're down inside the 20-yard line.
When problems have occurred with the play clock, with getting plays off, people in, a couple of the ones you mentioned last, have you looked at those? Is it one thing that's causing it, or is it something different every time?
No. Have we had that issue any time other than Saturday, Kevin?
I mean, I'm thinking a couple times over the past couple of years. Maybe it's not huge. Just
I think it was. I mean, I think it's we had 2 instances where we had offensive timeouts on Saturday, which should never occur. And I think if you go back and look at the history, 7 years doing this, like we traditionally never use our timeouts on offense, so we had to use 2 the other day. They're like the one was a total. We just had a MA on the one where we were on the last drive, right? We came out of our little sugar huddle. That was an MA. Like, guy just he forgot what to do. All right, no excuse on that. The first one was totally my fault. Like, the way we're doing this is like I basically got a script for Garrett, and then we got a play bank for Garrett, and we got a play bank for Daggy, and like I had the wrong one. Like, I put Garrett in, and it was like it's totally my fault. You know what I mean? And so those were the 2 that we did the other day. The Oklahoma game, I know we had to use 1. I was trying to eat up some clock and let it get too low, but those were the 2 from Saturday.
You've been good with your whole communication process there from box to field.
Yeah, we're not having, like I said, the one we just had an MA, and then the other one was on me. Like, I had Garrett in the game, but I called it. I called Daggy play for Garrett, which is not it. That's on me. It's a little bit longer story, but it's definitely my fault.
Expound upon O'Loughlin. You talked about him a little bit there, but what he's meant, just his growth in general over your time here.
Yeah, man, he is. The last 2 weeks, we've asked a lot out of him against Oklahoma. You know, he had to block and pass protect Benita in several one-on-one situations. And I thought he did a really nice job competing. I'm not saying he won all those battles, but he didn't lose very many. You know, there's some bunch of ties in there, and that's good when you're talking about an early first-round draft pick. So, and this week I thought he was dominant at times run blocking. You know, and for you all that watch a bunch of video and stuff, go back and watch. I thought he played really physical. He was active in the pass game, which the better your tight ends block, the easier it is to get him the ball. But he has, and I think the thing that's really encouraging about that, and I think I said this last week, is he didn't practice all fall camp. So he really just started practicing Virginia Tech week, and so I think there's still a bunch of improvement there as we get through the year.
This is kind of a general question, not necessarily on this team. Something I've always wanted to ask. So we're in an analytical age now. You look at statistics. You normally average 8 to 10 yards per pass attempt. You normally average running about 4 yards of attempt. Yet you have got 50-50 pretty much on how many times you run. Why does it not, the yardage on passing reflect into the way the plays are called, like 55 passes to 20 runs rather than that?
So you're asking like the per attempt on each side?
It seems like there's more yardage to be gained in throwing the ball than there is in running.
Yeah, there is.
You and most coaches try to split it even.
Yeah, we're probably like, well, I know we're almost like 55, 45, 60, 40, and I think some of them are just kind of pass to run right now. Yeah, so it goes back to this is the way it's all. When you run the football, there's less bad things that can happen. When you throw it, I mean that. But you're right. If you go back and look at throwing the football, you're going to get more yards per attempt. And our yards per attempt was good the other day. That's the best we had. And we did a better job running after the catch and things like that. Yeah, but we're not necessarily looking for balance. We got to, for us, we've got to do a better job of manipulating the extra hitters and using some run action pass stuff. And at the same time, when we talk about distribution, not necessarily run pass, but we've got to get like our wideouts like better distributed, or distributed is a better way to say that, I guess. Sorry about that, Kentuckian coming out. But we got to get more of our wideouts involved.
What he's asking, when you look at a box score after the game, what's the first stat you look at?
Well, it's changed because like the rules have changed. Like that's why, like offensively, and that's probably what you're asking. Like so offensively, like for whatever reason, we just haven't had very many possessions this year, right? And so you really got to look at efficiency. Back in the day where the rules of the game were a little bit different, and you were getting 13 to 15 possessions in a game. How many first downs you got, what total offense, all that kind of stuff. It had a lot more. Now, for whatever reason, okay, we're in that 8 to 10. You know what I mean? Like we had I think 8 real possessions the other night. The other afternoon, and you're talking about. Yeah, so I mean, you start thinking about it. On paper, if you go, okay, you're going to score on 50% of your drives. Okay, well, you used to think 14. That's 7 drives, and that's pretty productive, right? Well, now you're in that 8 to 10. Well, from an efficiency standpoint, that's pretty good, but it's not good enough if you're scoring field goals, right? The way the game, so it's different. So now, I'm really looking at yards per attempt. I want to know that. I think that's a telltale. Your third down percentage and our fourth down, because we go forward on fourth down a good bit. So those two, and I look at third and fourth down together. I don't necessarily look at I look at end of series opportunities, right? So if you go for it on fourth down, the fourth down's the end of series. So those are the things, and then I always look at our punt, like how many punt return yards, because we're trying to create fair catches.
So the new offensive coordinator for them, it's quarterback's different, but it's kind of similar BYU stuff, especially with the formations and I guess what you would call misdirection maybe. How do they get into that? And so often, because I'm guessing they want to take it away, but they still do it. And
well,
then how do you deal with
I think that offensively, what the goal is simple for you, hard for them, and they've done a great job of that. And what I mean is they're primarily focused on being an outside zone team, and so they've done a nice job with that. They stay consistent with that. They give you a bunch of different looks, a bunch of different surfaces, whether they run it to a tackle or a tight end or two tight ends. So a bunch of different services. They do a bunch of pre-snap motions and shifts, which I'm sure we're going to see because we struggled with it last week. But and then they do a nice job mixing in their nakeds and their shot plays off of it. And so I think that they've got a good identity as far as who they want to be, and they were able, with a schedule early in the season, kind of get in a rhythm. And they've done a nice job. And Bohannon, I credit him because, like I said, I think he's taking care of the football and he's playing within himself, and he's a good runner too. And they've started to use him in that role the last 2 weeks.
You talked about fewer possessions, and obviously you guys don't play with a great deal of tempo. I understand, I think, why, but explain your thought process in trying to slow the game down.
Well, that wasn't we weren't trying to do that on Saturday. They just, we weren't very good on third downs. All right, so we didn't do as good a job getting off the field defensively, and like I think when they didn't play with a lot of tempo either. They tempo us a little bit in the red zone a couple times, but they didn't play a lot of tempo. Really the only game we really tried to shorten was Oklahoma. That's the only one intentionally that we tried to do. I think that we'd be comfortable. I think offensively and defensively, and that tended, we'd be, on both sides of the ball, we'd be comfortable with more possessions. But the only one we intentionally tried to shorten the game was Oklahoma.
this efficiency stuff brings you back to the beginning. You said details have to be more consistent with. Yeah. You mentioned the things that maybe we miss that are important. Are there ones that you think you could improve that would make you more efficient, so you could capitalize on fewer possessions?
You talking about as far as statistics?
Issues or matters that have your attention that you need to maximize because that could make up a difference in the smaller.
We've got to do a better job with our outside zone, and we've got to do a better job because we're a good inside zone team, but teams do some things take that away, and we've had some opportunities for big runs on the outside zone, and we're not executing at a high enough level. We had some good ones on Saturday, but not consistently. So we need to do a better job with that. And then we've got to execute, some protection on our shot plays, and then we've got to do a better job of hitting those too. From a quarterback and receiver perspective as well.